Imagine cracking open your phone, blurry-eyed at kind of 6 in the morning, and the first thing that you see is XRP dancing at $2.24. Yep, $2.24. Taunting that kind of stubborn $3 ceiling like a kid on a trampoline who can't quite touch the kind of leaves overhead. Now that kind of tiny flicker of green got my coffee-deprived brain racing. What would it take for this coin to break not just the $3 ceiling, but to leapfrog the entire skyline and tap $30? Here's a spoiler alert. It involves a mind-bending chunk of the US money supply, and the math is going to make your eyebrows do cartwheels. So stick with me here and stick around, because by the end of this little adventure, you'll either be jazzed about the possibilities or grateful that you didn't FOMO your rent money into digital tokens last night. Okay, so quick reality check before we kind of let our imaginations sprint ahead. And it might just shock you, but I am not a financial advisor, and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies, they are highly volatile, and you could lose all the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. Your investments, of course, are entirely your own responsibility. You should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses. And this video today, it is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright then, so the legal force field is deployed. Now let's kick back, sip that coffee, and picture me hunched over a spreadsheet yesterday, muttering at my screen like a mad scientist while the cat kind of judged my life's choices from at least the windowsill. Now, the catalyst here, an article by Sam Wisdom, Raphael, basically timestamped on June 10th, 2025. Now, which, drops a kind of tantalizing number that the US M2 money supply has puffed up to a hefty $21.86 trillion, up more than $1 trillion since last December. Now, that's the economy, found an old jacket in storage, and surprise, the pockets were stuffed with extra trillion in loose change. Now you might be thinking, why does that matter? Well, M2 is basically all the cash and near cash sloshing around. That's paper bills, checking deposits, savings, small time deposits, retail market funds, the stuff that you and I theoretically yank out tomorrow and could go and buy tacos or, XRP with. Now, when those numbers swell, well, liquidity sloshes like water in a kiddie pool, and investors start looking for juicier returns, at least juicier than a 0.01% savings account. Now, sometimes that's hot money flows straight into crypto, inflating prices faster than you can say to the moon. Now, other times, of course, the Fed steps in, hikes rates, and the party music screeches to a halt. So liquidity is a fickle beast then, right? Think of it like my friend who kind of RSVPs maybe to every event and ghost texts, you kind of 30 minutes before showtime. Now, here is the juicy kind of thought experiment that the XRP community has been chewing on. What if the XRP market cap grabbed just 8%? Yep, a single digit slice of that kind of, gigantic M2 pie, right? Well, 8% of $21.86 trillion, clocks in at roughly $1.748 trillion. Now, let's put that next to Ethereum's current $301 billion market cap, and suddenly our hypothetical XRP looks like it's kind of wearing rocket boots. With 58.82 billion XRP tokens also sloshing around, a $1.748 trillion market cap would push each coin to about $29.73. Okay, now let's kind of round it up and just call it a nice neat $30 for dramatic flair. So $30. That's more than a kind of 13-fold jump from where we're sitting today. So let's imagine kind of jogging into our wallets, seeing those decimals shift and, realizing the value of the coins that you forgot that you bought in 2021 now equates at least equals, I should say, the kind of sticker price of a brand new electric pickup. Now, I can't lie here. That daydream alone almost made me kind of spit out my espresso all over my keyboard. But hang on. Before we kind of order kind of matching yachts, let's zoom out, right? XRP just clawed its way back above the $2 level after a 5-month kind of drag where bears had their claws out. It's holding the $2 line like a stubborn goalkeeper, yet every time that we get within kind of a whistling distance of $3, sellers pop up like whack-a-moles. Now, some analysts call it that resistance, and others they call it, a snooze fest. Myself, well, I call it potential energy, right? Now, you remember high school physics, right? The heavier that the boulder kind of poised on the hill, the nastier the smash when gravity finally kicks in. Well, XRP above $2 feels like that boulder. It's heavier, it's waiting, occasionally rolling back a few inches, but never tumbling all the way down. Meanwhile, of course, the macro backdrop is basically a soap opera with a cameo from every central banker on Earth. More M2 liquidity often means investors yo-yo into kind of risk assets. If you don't know what that means, it basically means you only live once. Now, if inflation whispers, I'm back, and Jerome Powell, can channel his inner bouncer, well, jack up interest rates and bounce the crypto crowd right out of the club. So we've all watched those kind of plot twists before, right? Let's remember 2022. NFTs went from yacht parties to pawn shop memes in just 6 months. So yes, the pump up the liquidity narrative feels bullish, but it's kind of taped to the wall with chewing gum and prayer. Still, you've got to love a good old moon math scenario, right? And the article helpfully kind of lines up some cheerleaders. So you got market commentator Crypto Balls kind of swear XRP is programmed to claim at least $30 this cycle. It's like it's destiny coded straight into its blockchain. Another analyst, Steph, kind of said back in March that XRP had already bottomed for this cycle and was preparing for a slingshot. That's the beauty of crypto, right? It's half data science, half campfire ghost stories, and somehow, we've kind of all hooked to it. And so there I was yesterday afternoon, curiosity kind of gnarling at me like my cat at a cardboard box. And I decided to run a little experiment, right? Place a tiny test buy on Blofin, the crypto exchange that I use these days. Full disclosure, it's an affiliate link that's in the description down below. So if you do open an account through it, the channel here gets a small cut and my cat continues living the luxurious tuna lifestyle. Now, for transparency, all out of the way here, I scooped up a sprinkle of XRP, nothing crazy, just enough to kind of feel the heartbeat of the market. Immediately, the order book flashed green, kind of like a traffic light during kind of rush hour, and I kind of felt that familiar adrenaline buzz, right? But right on cue, I also felt that pinch of skepticism. Will those digital digits kind of, actually mean anything tomorrow? The chart says that XRP hasn't convincingly broken $3 since February, and each visit to that region ends in a rejection worthy of a rom-com. Yet, there's this kind of perma-bull echo, right? That's kind of out there. Just wait until liquidity floods, then kaboom. Does it sound familiar? It's practically the background soundtrack of crypto Twitter. But here is where the numbers chilled me out. Even if we accept the moon math of an 8% M2 grab, 11 other kind of realities need to also line up like cosmic dominoes, right? Investor sentiment must stay euphoric. The Fed can't slam the brakes on. XRP's legal clarity must remain, at least has to remain crystal clear. And Bitcoin, the kind of apex predator, must keep the tide high. So probability? Somewhere between unlikely and stranger things have happened. But is it improbable/impossible? And if I told you in fact in 2010 that a meme coin featuring a cartoon Shiba Inu would hit a $50 billion market cap, you would have laughed me out of the room. Yet Dogecoin happened. Now, let me kind of weave in a more relatable vibe then. Picture your buddy Dave, right? There's a Dave in every friendship group, I'm sure, who kind of sees a 5% pay rise and instantly upgrades to a premium gym membership, a smart fridge, and 3 new streaming services. Liquidity, baby, more cash, more spending, sometimes on sensible stuff, sometimes on avocado-themed bath bombs. The US economy pulling a Dave with its M2 expansion means there's simply more money swirling around, seeking a new home. Now, whether that ends up being inside XRP bags depends on the collective belief and the ever mysterious narrative. Right now, money supply growth is pumping the story, but like Dave's bank account, it can evaporate if interest rates spike or the next shiny trend steals the spotlight. So you can't dodge the psychological element either, right? XRP's $2 level has become the security blanket that you had as a kid. It's comforting, a little worn out, but you refuse to toss it in, right? Now every dip to $1.90 triggers buy orders from diamond hands who think $2 is the floor of a lifetime, right? The longer it holds, the more that belief hard codes itself into the trader brains. Now, if the floor stays solid, eventually someone flips the risk on switch, volume explodes, and we test $3 again. Maybe even break it, maybe not. But each attempt weakens resistance, like kind of waves eroding at a sea wall, right? One decisive breach and suddenly $4, they aren't a fairy tale anymore. And the $5, they join the party. And at that point, folks will, of course, start writing threads about $10, $20, $30, like they're reading bedtime stories. And so I asked, should I just wait for the breakout? Well, friend, suddenly, waiting for that is kind of like waiting for a strategy, but so is nibbling, right? DCA style. So if you believe in the tech and the narrative, personally, I'm kind of splitting the difference here, right? I bought that tiny kind of batch on Blofin, again, affiliate link in the description if you want to explore, and I'm content with it to kind of let it kind of marinate while I kind of keep dry powder ready. Because if we truly sniff that 8% kind of M2 scenario turning real, right, you can bet your bottom Satoshi that the market won't telegraph it with skywriting. It will just absolutely rip. Now, let me kind of drag you into the spreadsheet rabbit hole then that I tumbled down, right? The raw math is hypothetical and, it's interesting, right? Current supply of 58.82 billion, right? Target cap, market cap of $1.748 trillion. Price per coin, $29.73. Multiply your stack by, a 13.3. And you understand why XRP diehards, get a little bit giddy, right? That multiplier is the campfire where tales of Lambo fleets and, generational wealth roasts like marshmallows. And the contrarian, though, kind of points to market cap reality. A $1.748 trillion, XRP would dwarf everything except Bitcoin. For the market to kind of support that, we would need a tidal wave of new liquidity or seismic shift from other cryptos into XRP. Could it happen? Sure. Will it? Insert a shrug emoji here. The other thing that's important to understand is that market cap can be very misunderstood. Market cap in itself is only showing you macro level pricing, right? It doesn't show you the liquidity. It doesn't show you the inflows. It doesn't show you value. It just shows you a price at the top level. But to keep my sanity, I ran a kind of smaller slice too. What if XRP captures just 1% of the M2? Well, that's still $218 billion. Price tag around $3.7. Bam, suddenly that kind of feels less like a sci-fi movie. A modest 65% move from here might actually happen in a bull cycle and nothing but memes and a kind of well-timed catalyst, right? Maybe the next kind of Ripple partnership, maybe a regulatory green light, maybe a broader market waking up to utility tokens again. The point here is that even baby steps in the M2 share game could actually juice XRP meaningfully. So the kind of 8% scenario, while great, isn't actually binary. There's a kind of spectrum of outcomes where holders could actually still come out smiling. And the other part of this is to understand that market cap in itself is, as I said, a macro level pricing. It has been documented with inflow data, and you can Google this. So hit up Google and look for the inflows, capital inflows versus market cap. And in some instances, we have seen XRP's market cap moving 600 times faster than the capital inflows. Now that is on the extreme side. Even if we were to dial that down and say that capital inflows were to represent 10, 20, 30x, to market cap, we could see, a $200 billion capital inflow turning into $1 trillion if it were to simply do a 5x market cap multiplier. Very interesting stuff that goes on when you start to understand the dynamics between the supply and the demand. But let's get back to talking about catalysts, because you don't want to underestimate storytelling here. Crypto is Hollywood for nerds. Narratives rule, Teslas buy Bitcoin, right? You can cue bull run. And, maybe Facebook rebrands to Meta, metaverse tokens skyrocket. And if the narrative of XRP, bridges, utility, or global liquidity, I should say, resurfaces alongside this M2 liquidity backdrop, watch how quickly YouTube thumbnails turn neon green with $30 XRP in screaming fonts, if well. It's ridiculous, and it's ridiculously effective too. But hey, let's ground ourselves, right? If inflation flares, the Fed yanks liquidity and M2 contracts. The kind of dream gets delayed, right? We kind of learned that lesson in 2022 when quantitative easing turned to quantitative tightening, and, everything from tech stocks to cardboard boxes got repriced. XRP's resilience above $2 is encouraging though, but resilience is not immunity, right? My cat reminds me of that whenever she knocks over a glass. Gravity never takes a day off. So at this point, you might be wondering, so should I drop everything and, YOLO, oh, you only live once? No. Instead, hop into our free educational Discord. The link is chilling in the description. It's kind of where we nerd out over these scenarios in real time, share charts, and roast each other's hopium levels. It's kind of like a group therapy session for crypto addicts, except nobody's judging your candle star patting obsession. You can bring your questions, you can bring your skepticism, you can bring your cat memes. We've got channels for all of it. And if you do decide to pick up some XRP, whether on Blofin, affiliate link supports the channel, thanks in advance, or elsewhere, remember that the liquidity dance, you need to zoom out to the kind of weekly chart and ask yourself, does the macro tide look friendly? Are you prepared emotionally if price revisits $1.50 before it even touches $3 again? Because every fun what-if story has an evil twin named Drawdown, and that dude loves surprise visits. Now, with all of that said, I can't shake the excitement, right? You can probably tell with my over-enthusiastic face. Now, the existence, of course, of crypto lets regular people tinker with trillion-dollar ideas, right? We can kind of get to ask questions like, what if 8% of the US money supply found its way into this digital token that moves value across borders in seconds? Then, of course, we can run the numbers in our kind of pajamas at midnight. It's a wild, it's risky, but it's also why we're here, right? As long as you treat the numbers as a compass, not as a guarantee, the exploration is half of the fun. So here are my closing thoughts. Whether XRP kind of Miranda's at kind of $2 for another 6 months or pulls a slingshot worthy of an Elon Musk rocket, the kind of real playbook is patience plus education, right? The money supply backdrop gives us some context. The charts kind of gives us some timing clues, and our own kind of risk tolerance writes the final chapter. Personally, I keep dollar cost averaging tiny nibbles, keep the kind of spreadsheet handy, and keep checking the Fed's pulse. maybe one morning the headline will read, XRP breaks $3, eyes $5. And all those late night calculations will feel less like daydreams and more like a roadmap.